Hello, genealogists. It's Craig again with Just Genealogy. Today is Saturday. That means it's time for becoming a professional genealogist. This is session 2 of what will be multiple sessions. We begin with a reminder of the stool with 5 legs. Actually, we're still not to the point where we're going to talk about those legs yet. We've got one more session to go through, and then we'll start talking about those 5 legs. What I want to remind you about is what the 5 legs are. That being researcher, author, lecturer, publisher, and educator. So next week we'll start talking about researcher, and then we'll work our way through until we get to the end. I want to remind you that every situation is different. What I do is not what you might do. What you may do, I probably won't do. Everything is different. You have to find what your level of comfort is with what you're doing. Because if you're not comfortable and you're not having fun, one has to ask the question, why are you doing this? So anyway, just remember that every situation is different. Now, what's different with today is that I've created a self-assessment worksheet, and we're sort of going to wander through it a little bit today. But if you email me at crscott@heritagebooks.com, I will provide you with a clean copy, and then you can sit down and take it. It's a self-assessment, so I don't need for you to send it back to me, but you need to take a self-assessment if you're going to do this. So let's look for a moment at your past. How much did you make from genealogy last year? How many hours did you work? What was your rate of pay? What, before expenses, before taxes, after taxes, your net, those kind of things? Was it worth it? What 5 things did you do right last year? What 5 things did you do not right, or that you could have done better? If you could fix just one thing that would have the greatest impact on your ability to make a living, what would it be? And we'll talk about learning the value of the Pareto Analysis in your business. I'm an old Duran trained total quality management instructor from 40 years ago. Business process improvement is what I eat and drink outside of genealogy. I'm always applying some new process to something to try to make something better. Doesn't always work, but you have to try sometimes. When I was younger, an ensign in the Navy, I was the fiscal and supply officer of a dental clinic in Subic Bay. And I had 2 dental repair technicians who worked for me. And they were, I guess you could call them, they were young old salts compared to this, who they believed to be a fresh caught ensign, although I'd been in for many years before I became an ensign. So they used to rue Mondays, because every Monday Ensign Scott would show up with 10 new ideas for the week. 8 would just be useless. 1 would just be pure crap. But 1 would be really good. And they looked forward to the 1 and convincing me the other 8 or 9 just weren't worth doing. But that's pretty much how I live. I'm always looking at something, how to improve. That's how Heritage Books has survived all these years, is because it's a constantly improving one way or the other. So that's what your business has to do. It has to constantly improve. So you need to have certain metrics available to you so that you can evaluate what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and how you can improve. So how much did you make from genealogy last year? You should know this number because it should be on your taxes. Were you profitable? Generally, you should be profitable at doing research because theoretically your expenses should be low because it's gas, parking, and lunch, usually. If it's more than that, you really probably need to look at it. How many hours did you work? Did you keep track of your time? Did you divide how much money did you make by the number of hours? What's the answer? $7.75? Are you making 7.25 minimum wage? Or are you doing better than that? At what level is it important for you to track hours? You have to decide that. There are some of you who absolutely rely on every nickel that you make doing genealogy, and there are others of you who don't. And that's when it becomes important. When you're tracking the nickels, trust me, your hours will be very important. What was your rate of pay before expenses, before taxes, after taxes? What's your gross versus your net? Do you adequately track your expenses? Can you be audited at any minute? Are you prepared to be audited at any minute? You need to know what your net is. If you're not making money doing genealogy, you need to figure out how to fix that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Many times you can't make a living at genealogy because you don't have enough clients. Not because you have so many clients, but your expenses are so high and you're not charging enough. So there isn't the right balance. So you want to be able to keep track of these kinds of things so that you know whether you're doing a good job or not. I like to know what 5 things I did right last year. Every year in January, I evaluate my past year. What things did I do right? So, for example, this last year I got a new printer at Heritage Books, and we printed already 100 books with that printer. So that was something I did right. What 5 things did I do incorrectly? I got another printer last year, and we did 100 books. Anyway, that's a much different story. Could I have done better? Yes. I can always do better, and so can you. The bigger question is, what am I going to do about it? This is what you have to deal with almost every day as a genealogist. What are you going to do about it? I found that when I didn't have clients, I made myself a client. I was my own client. When I do personal genealogy research, I pretend that I am my own client. And I treat myself like I would treat my client. So therefore, my client gets a report. It doesn't count if you don't write it down. So what's important is that you work at least a 40-hour week. You may not be paid for that full 40 hours, but you have to work that 40 hours because you want to generate those other revenue streams. So are you authoring a book? Are you preparing a lecture? Are you giving a lecture? Are you doing your own personal genealogy because you finally have time? Those are the kind of things that you have to deal with. Then you need to ask that question. If you could fix one thing, what would it be? What is the one thing that you need to fix? What one thing should I try every January to find at least one thing that I am going to fix? Am I successful all the time? I am not. Do I worry about that? Sometimes, and I'm not a worrier. There are some things, though, that are business killers that you have to worry about. Taxes is a good example. So, figure out what that one thing is that has the greatest impact on your business. This assumes that you have a list of things. I always have a list of things. Every day when I wake up, sit at my desk, I write down 5 things that I'm going to get done today. Only 5. And I try to make sure that those 5 things get done. I always try to do the hardest thing first so that I have enough energy to do the simple things later, rather than do the simple things and not have enough energy to do the hard thing next. So it's just training, but I have a list. And it's on a piece of paper. It's not on my iPhone. It's not on my computer. It's just a piece of paper, piece of scrap paper with 5 things on it. And those are the things that I've got to get done today. Do I always succeed? No. I succeed most times. And when I get those 5 things done, some things may have come up, and I try to take care of those. There is the concept of touching things once and then putting it away once it's dealt with. Deal with it when you touch it. if you can. So you have to start making lists of things that need to be improved, list of things you need to do, list of things you want to look at, list of webinars that you want to listen to, those kind of things. My one best thing I found in my life was therapy, but that's just me. I'm not the flaming narcissist that I used to be. Those of you who have known me for 35 years know what that was like. So I need to tell you about something called Pareto Analysis. Pareto Analysis is premised on the idea that 80% of a project's benefit can be achieved by doing 20% of the work. Or conversely, 80% of problems are traced back to 20% of the causes. Google it, YouTube it, whatever. Learn the value of Pareto Analysis. Learn to focus on what will solve 80% of your problem versus what will solve 20% of your problem. You'll be much happier. So, the problem. Some folks do all the easy things and they have little impact on anything you're doing, and they put off the hard things that would improve your situation, and therefore the hard things never get done. You don't learn from easy things. You learn from hard things. You learn from things that you have to work at. Because after all, theoretically, you already know the easy things. I find that I learn from the things that I do that are hard to do. The way that I learn is propose a lecture on a topic that I know nothing about but want to know about. So therefore, I must take the time to learn about it in order to prepare for the lecture, in order to be in a position where I can answer any question that is asked of me about that subject that I'm about to lecture on. So that for me is hard, but it also is a learning experience, so therefore it's worthwhile. So let's talk about the future for a minute. How much do you want to make a year from genealogy? None of us are going to become millionaires. How many hours do I want to work? Do you want to do this part-time? Do you want to do it full-time? Do you want to do it full-time plus? What rate should I be charging for my services? Personally, my rate is $75 an hour, but truthfully, I'll be honest with you, it's largely to keep people away because I don't really have time to do research anymore. And living where I live, I'm not close to the repositories that I'm well known for researching in. What actions do you have to take to improve how you make your living? Well, let's talk about that for a bit. How much do you want to make a year from genealogy? Well, it depends. You have to be reasonable. And is what you want to make from genealogy actually attainable? In other words, can you make $250,000 a year doing genealogy? You can. Will you? More than likely not, because you're not ready yet. Am I making $250,000 a year from genealogy? No. Do I have revenues of $500,000 a year? Yes, but that's not the same as net. Remember that. So, how much do you need to make? How many hours do you want to work? So, you need to know how much you want to make. You want to know how many hours you want to work. So, you now know what rate you should be charging for your services. So, let's break this out. Remember that number from last time of 2080. The math is, if you want to make $52,000 a year and you work 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, that's equivalent to $25 an hour. That's before expenses. Keep those two things separate. My recommendation is that you charge $50 an hour. And you might make $52,000 a year. Multiply whatever figure you come up with by 2, and that's probably what you should be charging. Because you won't work 40 hours a week, as hard as you try, unless you work for someone else who employs you for 40 hours a week. You will more likely have billable hours of 20 hours a week and probably have non-billable hours of 20 hours a week. What actions do you have to take to improve how you make your living? Well, marketing is one of them. And by far, marketing is my worst failing of all. I am a lousy marketeer. I don't suffer from a lack of personality, but that's not marketing. So today, we have 200 subscribers to this YouTube channel. That's a great thing. 200 is a lot of people. It's not enough, but 200 is a lot of people. We're almost at 2,000 views. We're at about 125 hours of people watching. So, what I need for you to do, because you like what I'm doing, I hope, is I need for you to subscribe. I need for you to tell your friends. I need for you to click on that notification bell so that you'll know every day at noon that I'm coming out with a new video. Marketing is my worst failing. I hate asking. That's the problem. You also need to become involved professionally. You need to find those educational opportunities. You need to learn how to network. You need to have the right equipment, and you know that you need to ask for assistance sometimes. So, educational opportunities, because of COVID, there's no shortage. There are webinars everywhere, and there's no excuse for you not to at least be watching 1 or 2 webinars a week. Even I am watching 1 or 2 webinars a week. In spite of making 7 webinars a week, I'm watching 2 more. There's pay for webinars and there's free webinars. Legacy, Family Tree, webinars, excellent place. There is a Board for Certification of Genealogists webinar library out there. They are free. There are 96 of them. The last time I counted, there's probably 104 now. I don't know what the number is, but it's more than 96, and you should be looking at almost every single one of those. And when you're doing that, make a list of activities and write down what you in fact saw, who presented it, what the date was that you watched it, and then make a note to yourself about what you learned from that webinar, because that will be helpful in putting it together. Always, if you're taking part in an educational activity, write it down. If you write something and it's been accepted for a journal and it's been published, write it down. You want to have an activities list at your beck and call. It's on I keep mine on my desktop so that I can add to it whenever I need to add to it. Which reminds me, I haven't added any of these YouTube videos to my activities lists. They're not going to be very happy with me. So, there always is a list of upcoming live webinars on Legacy Family Tree. Go and look. See what's there. I highly recommend the Context, a Powerful Tool for Problem Solving. Of course, I recommend all of these, but I highly recommend the Context one as one that you should definitely go and listen to quickly. Networking is important. You want to know who the people are. You can't survive in this environment, in this profession, in isolation. You just can't. Yes, you can do genealogy, but you're not going to be the best professional genealogist you could be without networking, because we learn from everyone. It is one great big, I don't know that it's dysfunctional, but it is one great big, I don't know that it's happy, but it's one great big family. Most of us have known each other for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. We've grown up together. You have that same opportunity. You will hear people talk about there's a clique in genealogy. There isn't. In genealogy, all you have to do is show up. And that's what you have to do. You have to show up. Now, before COVID, we all met in bars at conferences, and then we would talk through the evening. Well, if you see a bunch of people in a bar that look like genealogists you know of, join us. You will always be welcome. You might have to go find a chair, but you'll always be welcome. For other opportunities, remember that there are 26 Association of Professional Genealogy chapters. I highly recommend that you belong to your state chapter or local chapter. I highly recommend that you join the Writers' SIG. if you're into writing, and the forensic SIG if you're into forensics. I personally, I live for going to the writing SIG once a month. It's by far one of the most favorite things I've done in a long time. I'm not going to talk about equipment today, but you're going to have to get equipment, and I don't mean this gaming station, but I have 3 screens on my computer system. That seems pretty high up for me, and I'd probably get a crick in my neck. But I still have three screens, and I find that 3 screens is the most efficient way for me to be able to do the things that I do. Whether you have this fancy up and down desk, I have one of these, but I always have so much stuff on my desk that every time I go to lift it up, everything falls off, or I bring it down, everything falls off. So it pretty much stays in one place now. I'm probably going to have to deal with that. I think my solution is to have 2 desks at 2 different heights, so that I have a standing desk and I have a sitting desk. And I have something like that in my office now because of a computer where I can stand, because of a printer where I put a computer on top of the printer and I'm able to stand. So I'm not sitting all the time. Assistance is also a thing. You want to know where to find answers. Knowing the answer is not as important as knowing where to find the answer. You need to know what tools you need to get the job done. And you need to know who to call when you can't get the job done or need help. And there are lots of people out there that you can call. Nobody cares about talking to somebody for 5 minutes. It's when you take an hour of somebody's time that it's a problem, because that all of a sudden is known as a non-billable hour. I sort of have the rule of thumb that if I think I can solve it in 15 minutes, I'm pro bono. If I'm going to take an hour, I'm sorry, but we're going to have a negotiation. So this brings to an end today. I want to remind you that I will send you a copy of the self-assessment worksheet. If you email me at my email address and ask me for the self-assessment worksheet, I think that you will find that it will be useful to you. There's not much more I can say, except that this is just genealogy, where we're converting people doing genealogy into genealogists day by day. Next week, next Saturday, we will deal with that first leg, the research leg, which should be a lot of fun. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to send me a comment. Don't forget to forget to forget. See you tomorrow.